Hello everybody, my name is Paul and I'm a country realtor in Virginia, and today I'm going to talk a lot about homesteading. There's a lot of people who are moving out of the country and people who are retiring like myself in my age bracket, or younger people who want to homestead like my children's age. And to all of you, I want to encourage you to take a look at Virginia. Virginia is a really beautiful state. I lived here about 6 years, and just look it up on the map. It's a lot of history here, and it's a really, really great place for homesteading because Virginia has the largest number of small private farms of any state in the country. A lot of people don't know that, but the way Virginia was historically settled was everybody had to just cut down the trees, and it was just total homesteading. I mean, that was true all the way up along the East Coast. But in particular, Virginia has a long history in a milder climate. So as opposed to places like Maine and upstate New York and so on, Virginia has also a large beach area and a lowlands. So there was tons and tons of timber and wildlife and so on. And it became a place where even to this day, a lot of families have handed down their homesteads for many, many generations. And there's a lot of recreational land also. Virginia has the historic Jefferson National Forest and also Washington National Forest. And the Shenandoah Valley, the Shenandoah River, the James River. It's just got just abundant streams and, again, a long history. So as I drive around in my real estate business, I'm a realtor, I see so many mile after mile after, well, there's another little homestead, they got chickens, these guys have sheep, they have a couple cows, and there's some cattle grazing and horses and so on. So it's a really, really good area to look at for homesteading. And there's a very patriotic culture here, especially in the rural areas, and a lot of support. There's a lot of zoning, it matters a lot, and I'll talk a little bit about that in some of my other videos and today also. Homesteading is a natural thing, but one of the things that's happened is, you see, there's a shortage now because there's a lot of land that's not being used, and there are people moving out of the city who want to do a little homesteading, and young people who want to raise a family like my sons. They want to have their little homestead area and their operation. And the problem is that there's not very many for sale because a lot of people are happy there. I sold one last year for $272,000, and it had almost 11 acres and a house and a barn and a little pond and a cottage. So there is a high demand, and there are opportunities, for example, to just buy some raw land. Now, a little bit about buying that. I have talked about that in some of my other videos, but when you go to buy land for homesteading, there's a lot of things that you really need to look for. Of course, you need to have water, you want to have sun, you want to have a place to have a septic, you want to have a driveway in, and maybe some views, and there's a lot of things that you look for. Now, there's a lot of water in Virginia, so that's not a really big issue because there's tons and tons of streams, and generally wells are very successful. There's some areas that are really difficult, but there's a lot of aquifers in Virginia also, so there's a lot of crevices and ravines where springs are sprouting out, so that's really good too. Now, when you buy land, you want a homestead. If you want to develop it yourself, that's a big process because it sounds really romantic. Okay, I'm going to buy my 10 acres and then I'm going to make a homestead there. Well, the settlers were here before us long ago. That was a lot of work. They had to cut down huge trees, and they just had to just make basic cabins to live in and everything. So even though there's a lot of land out there, you got to think about like what's involved in making a real homestead out of it. See, so that's a technical subject that can go on for a number of videos and so on. And there's a lot of people out there who are showing us how to do that using machinery and so on. So, but one thing about the real estate angle is you need to think about the zoning. Will someone complain if you decide to build an odd-shaped house there, or a tiny home, or put a mobile home there or something? So you have to think about those kind of things, the zoning and the neighbors. And basically, like I said, Virginia has tons and tons of homesteads. So if you set up a homestead and you start having chickens, nobody's going to bat an eye. Well, we got chickens. So it's a very, very common thing here. Now, in terms of scouting, I do a lot of scouting. I live in a rural area myself. I live on 4 acres, and there's a little barn here, and there's a stream down at the bottom of the hill, and it's lovely here. And there's a lot to trying to make a development out of develop a homestead. There's a lot of work to be done. So one of the things that people can do when they look for property is to consider things that already have had a little bit of improvements on them. If it has a field, for example, that's a bonus, because if you've got to cut down a bunch of trees and start making a garden, it's just going to be a really rough situation. So the water, the wildlife, the access. Now, I had a situation last year where someone bought a property and they had not had a 500-year rainstorm, and shortly after she bought the property, about a couple months after that, we had a 500-year rain, and it made a lot of gravel, ditches in the gravel driveway, and we found out where all the water flows and where the spring is. So there's a lot of surprises that you can get when you buy a piece of property. So you want to look at the topography, and I encourage people to go to the GIS. It's called the Graphic Information System for every county. I use that a lot in prospecting and so on. And you find out, let's say there's a property that you see on Zillow or Realtor, and you can find out who's around it, what the neighborhood is like, and so on. And even some satellite images. Sometimes you even have several years of satellite images, and you can see the progress at different times of the year and so on. So now, I know that people are moving into this area from out of state because I was a realtor. I get that business and an increase. Now, I want to say, look, I can scout for you. If you see something on Zillow or Realtor.com or something, and you feel, hey, look, I need to know what it's like. I've done that sometimes, and I find out, like, well, it looks good on the satellite map that you saw on Google, but when you actually get there, it's got a 45-degree slope or something. So there's things like that that you need to know. And I'm a scout. I can go out and take a look at something for you. I drive around the region all the time. I'm well versed in the geography of Virginia. I've traveled mostly around the state. I stay pretty much west of Richmond in that area, and the Shenandoah Valley all the way up to the northern area of Virginia, all the way down to the bottom on the west side. I'm in the mountainous area near the Shenandoah Mountains and the Blue Ridge Parkway. So, again, anyone who's interested in scouting, you'll need some help, okay? Because I know I deal with customers, they don't know what they're doing sometimes. They don't even know if the zoning is right. And that's one of the things I specialize. I specialize in helping people find rural property. Now, one of the things that I do as a realtor, which you may not do, is I scout a lot, and I send out letters, and I try to contact people who have property from out of state and vacants and so on, because there's land out there. So one of the things that I suggest, if you're going to be a buyer and look for property, then be really diligent, and then when you find something, don't be afraid of paying a few more $1,000s for it, because they're not making anymore, you see, and there's a demand for it. So when it really comes down to it, if you find a property that you really, really like, and it really suits all the needs of a good homestead, and has some options, like maybe some development on it, maybe a septic or a well already there, or some fencing or something, then go for it, because there's a lot of things that you may not recognize that property has value. For example, it might have timber, that it might have some great timber, it might have great sun exposure, it might have great water. It might have a spring on it that you don't even know about. You see, it might have berries and bushes. Like someone last year, a friend of mine, bought some land and found out it has like the original hickory and chestnut and walnut trees on it, and persimmons and pawpaws, and nice, got a spring too. So there's things that you can get in a property if you're diligent about looking, and overlook the flaws. Like, for example, there's a saying about a rough cut diamond. It's still a diamond. It may be even bigger than when you finally cut it. So a realtor like myself, a specialist in a real estate in a rural area, has an eye for a good homestead type of property, and I can help you find one. So I try to make these videos short. I have a lot of videos out there. Again, the summary here is I can do scout for you. The state of Virginia is a great, great place to homestead. It's very patriotic, especially in the rural areas. And they leave you alone. They don't bother you. You just do your thing on the zoning without causing any problem, and you're going to be fine. And there's areas where, you know, for those who are interested, hunting is very common in Virginia, and fishing. There's loads and loads of streams in Virginia, and some nice rivers like the James River. And you can go and enjoy the recreation around the river as well. So it's an all-round beautiful state for raising a family, for children. The economy is decent, the people are friendly, and freedom-loving. And if you want to target practice in your backyard or something, most people won't even bother. Where I live, you hear some gunshots now and then, people practicing, and nobody bats an eye. So anyway, thanks again for listening. I appreciate all the feedback, and I encourage people, again, contact me personally. The contact information is in the description. And I know a lot about rural real estate. I've lived in the country areas for many, many years. I lived in central Pennsylvania, around near the Amish. I lived in upstate New York, and I've lived in Virginia here for 6 years in a rural area. And there's a whole lot of opportunities because you can work now from home, as you know. A lot of people, young people know, as long as you have a decent internet connection, you can work from home and doing so many different things. And when you cut down your overhead, like where I live, my office is here, my storage is here, everything's here. I don't, even my recreation is right nearby, so I don't need to go anywhere, really. So I have a very all-round, beautiful reason to live in, and I really encourage people to come back to my videos about different aspects of buying and selling real estate in the state of Virginia. And I have a website called virginialandowners.com, and it's linked to the YouTube section that you're seeing now. So thanks again, and I hope to see you in one of my other videos.